Imagine a country of over 120 million people, Africa's seventh largest economy, where, until just a few years ago, there was only one telecom company, one for over a century. Now, that same country just opened its first stock exchange. It's registering tens of millions of citizens onto a national digital ID system. Its mobile money platform has more users than the population of Canada. And almost nobody outside the continent is talking about it. This is Ethiopia. And what's happening here right now might be one of the most underrated tech stories in the world. In this video, we're breaking down exactly how Ethiopia went from having almost no digital economy to becoming one of Africa's fastest emerging tech ecosystems, the government strategy behind it, the startups leading the charge, the billion-dollar mobile money war happening behind the scenes, and the massive challenges still standing in the way. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why investors, founders, and tech analysts are starting to call Addis Ababa the next Nairobi. Let's get into it. So before we dive into the companies and the apps, let's set the stage. Why is Ethiopia suddenly on everyone's radar? First, the basics. Ethiopia has a population of more than 126 million people, making it the second most populous country in Africa after Nigeria. Its economy is worth around $126 billion, putting it among the continent's largest. That's the scale we're talking about. But here's the thing, for most of its modern history, Ethiopia's economy was almost completely closed off to outside investment, especially in telecom and finance. The state controlled everything. One government-owned telecom operator. A banking sector closed to foreign players. No real stock market. No real venture capital scene. And yet, despite all of that, Ethiopia today has over 1,560 startups operating across the country. Of those, 226 have managed to raise outside funding, collectively pulling in around $1.67 billion in venture capital and private equity across more than 320 funding rounds. In just the last 5 years, over 240 new companies have been founded. Addis Ababa alone, the capital, is now home to more than 300 established startups and around 45 different ecosystem builders, incubators, accelerators, co-working spaces, and innovation hubs. Now, compared to ecosystems like Lagos or Nairobi, those numbers might not sound massive. And that's actually the point. Ethiopia's startup ecosystem grew by about 4.4% in the last year alone and currently ranks around 117th globally, but analysts increasingly describe it as an ecosystem that's emerging from the shadows. Here's a stat that really puts things in perspective. Between 2024 and 2025, Ethiopian headquartered startups raised less than $80 million in foreign capital, combined, across the entire ecosystem. For context, that's roughly what a single Series B funding round might look like for one company in Silicon Valley or even in Nigeria. So why does that matter? Because it tells us Ethiopia isn't lagging behind because of a lack of talent or opportunity, it's a story of timing. The doors only recently opened. And what's happened in just the past 5 to 6 years is genuinely remarkable. So let's talk about how that door got opened, starting with one of the most ambitious digital transformation plans on the entire continent. In 2020, the Ethiopian government launched something called the Digital Ethiopia 2025 strategy, and honestly, this is the single most important piece of context for understanding everything else in this video. Digital Ethiopia 2025 was essentially a national roadmap to digitize the entire country, government services, payments, identity, agriculture, healthcare, you name it. The goals were simple on paper but massive in scope: build out digital infrastructure, expand financial inclusion through Fintech, move government services online, and create an environment where digital businesses could actually thrive. And the government didn't just write a strategy document and call it a day. They backed it up with real structural reforms. The biggest one: ending Ethiopia's 126-year telecom monopoly. For over a century, Ethio Telecom was the only game in town. Then, in 2022, Kenya's Safaricom entered the Ethiopian market as a second licensed operator. In its first year alone, Safaricom built over 3,000 mobile towers and expanded coverage to 26 cities. The results have been dramatic. 3G coverage expanded by 50%. 4G access grew eightfold. As of 2025, Ethio Telecom reported around 47 million data and internet users, up from just 26 million 5 years earlier. Mobile subscribers across the country have climbed to roughly 97 million, with 57 million of those using the internet. Over 1,030 cities are now connected to 4G networks. To put that in perspective, mobile penetration in Ethiopia is now around 70% of adults. Smartphone penetration is still under 25%, which tells you there's enormous room for growth as smartphones become more affordable and accessible. Now, the government isn't stopping at 2025. There's already a follow-up plan in motion, informally being called Digital Ethiopia 2030, with even bigger targets, pushing mobile subscribers from 97 million to 128 million, expanding 5G coverage to 100 cities, and aiming to grow digital payments to more than 7 times their current share of GDP by 2030. According to Ethiopian officials, including the CEO of Ethio Telecom, the original Digital Ethiopia strategy has already had a profound effect. They say digital financial transactions in the country now actually surpass cash transactions. Let that sink in. In a country where, less than a decade ago, mobile money barely existed, digital payments are now reportedly more common than cash. But infrastructure and strategy documents are only half the story. The other half is identity, because you can't build a digital economy if people can't prove who they are online. And that brings us to one of the most ambitious projects in this entire strategy, FADA. Here's a question: how do you build mobile banking, e-government services, or digital healthcare for a population where an estimated 40% of people lack any kind of formal identification? That's the problem Ethiopia is trying to solve with FADA, its national digital ID program. FADA is designed to be a secure, biometric-based, interoperable identity system. The idea is that one digital ID can be used to access banking services, government programs, healthcare, telecom registration, basically anything that currently requires proof of identity. And the scale of ambition here is honestly staggering. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has reportedly called FADA the second most important national project in Ethiopia, right behind the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which is one of the largest infrastructure projects on the entire continent. That's the level of priority we're talking about. The project is backed by a $350 million World Bank funding package, and as of late 2025, more than 24 million Ethiopians have already been registered into the system. Private companies are now starting to integrate FADA authentication directly into their own platforms, which means if you're a fintech startup or a bank in Ethiopia, you can now verify a customer's identity through this national system instead of building your own verification process from scratch. For founders and tech companies, this is a massive deal. One Ethiopian tech CEO, Baru Zinu, founder of Africom Technologies, has described FADA as a genuine turning point for the industry. Now, identity is one piece of the puzzle. But the piece that's gotten the most attention, and arguably created the most dramatic story in Ethiopian tech, is mobile money. And specifically, a quiet but intense battle happening between two major players. Okay, this next part is one of the most fascinating business stories in African tech right now, and most people have never heard of it. In 2021, Ethio Telecom, the state-owned telecom giant, launched its own mobile money platform called telebirr. Think of it as Ethiopia's version of M-Pesa, a way to send money, pay bills, buy airtime, shop online, and receive payments, all from a basic mobile phone, no bank account required. Telebirr grew fast. As of recent reporting, it has over 41 million registered users. For context, That's roughly a third of Ethiopia's entire population using one mobile money app. Then, in 2023, Safaricom, the same company that built M-Pesa into one of the most successful mobile money platforms in the world, processing tens of billions of dollars across Kenya and other markets, launched M-Pesa in Ethiopia. Now here's where it gets interesting. Safaricom has reportedly invested over $2.27 billion into its overall Ethiopian operations. M-Pesa, the product that made Safaricom a household name across East Africa, was expected to be a major disruptor in Ethiopia too. But despite that massive investment, M-Pesa's growth in Ethiopia has been limited. While it has passed 3 million users, that's a small fraction compared to telebirr's 41 million. So what happened? According to industry analysis, the Ethiopian government effectively gave telebirr a massive structural advantage. As part of the Digital Ethiopia push, the government digitized over 900 essential public services, and in many cases, mandated or strongly defaulted to telebirr as the payment method. Utility bills, tax payments, government fees. If you're a citizen interacting with the state digitally, there's a good chance you're doing it through telebirr. That's an incredibly powerful network effect. Even if M-Pesa offers a great product, if the government, employers, and public services are all funneling transactions through telebirr, switching costs become enormous. This is honestly a fascinating case study for anyone interested in platform competition. It shows how a state-backed platform with regulatory tailwinds can outcompete even a battle-tested, internationally proven product backed by billions of dollars in investment. Now, beyond telebirr and M-Pesa, there's a whole ecosystem of private fintech companies trying to carve out their own space in this market. And that's where things get really exciting for entrepreneurs and investors. Let's talk about the startups actually building Ethiopia's tech future. So where does Ethiopia go from here? On the infrastructure side, the targets are clear: more mobile subscribers, 5G expansion to 100 cities, and a massive push to grow digital payments to over 7 times their current share of GDP by 2030. If even a fraction of these targets are hit, Ethiopia's digital economy could look dramatically different just 5 years from now. On the identity and data side, data is expected to keep expanding, and as more private companies integrate it into their platforms, it could become the backbone for everything from banking onboarding to healthcare records. There's also a new Personal Data Protection Proclamation and an Ethiopian Data Protection Commission that were established to govern how all this data gets used and protected, which, frankly, puts Ethiopia ahead of where a lot of countries were at a similar stage of digital development. We're also starting to see digital transformation spread beyond fintech and into sectors like healthcare. There's an active digital health strategy running from 2023 to 2032, with electronic medical records already rolled out to over 130 facilities, and partnerships exploring things like GPS-based emergency medical dispatch systems. And on the startup side, the talent pipeline keeps growing. Between training programs, the ICT Park, a new stock exchange providing potential exit pathways, and growing international attention, including major industry reports specifically highlighting Addis Ababa's ecosystem, the building blocks for a much bigger tech scene are increasingly in place. The big open question is whether local capital will follow. If Ethiopian and diaspora investors start deploying serious money into local startups, not just the occasional foreign check, that's when this ecosystem could really take off. So let's bring it all together. In just a few years, Ethiopia has gone from having a single state-run telecom company to having multiple operators, tens of millions of mobile money users, a national digital ID system registering people by the millions, a brand new stock exchange, over 1,500 startups, and companies like Chapa, ArifPay, and iCog Labs building real products that compete on a global stage. At the same time, it's a country still working through major challenges around capital access, electricity, and affordability, challenges that will shape exactly how fast and how far this transformation goes. But the direction of travel is unmistakable. Ethiopia is no longer the country that tech investors overlook, it's increasingly becoming the country they're starting to watch closely. If you found this breakdown useful, make sure to subscribe. we're covering emerging tech ecosystems across Africa and beyond, and Ethiopia is just one of many stories we think deserve way more attention. Drop a comment below, which African tech ecosystem should we cover next? Nigeria? Kenya? Rwanda? Let us know. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and like. See you in the next one.